And then he also asks, can Matt Luke get these current players retaught from what they were doing last season? Well, I don't want to say that they're being retaught because, again, it's the same system. I think a lot of things that they did last year weren't what they wanted to do, especially towards the back half of the season when the injuries started to pile up um, and things just weren't really going the way that they had hoped. But I think whatever adjustment they have to make, I think Matt Luke is certainly in a better position to do it than his predecessor was, just because he's just seen it. He's seen it all at this point. The experience. I mean, when you are a offensive line coach, I mean, you, especially a guy that has been at multiple programs like Matt Luke has. I mean, how different schemes work and how you want your offensive linemen to block, and he's done it at multiple. Hugh Freeze, when he was with Hugh Freeze at Ole Miss, which is more similar to kind of what the scheme that Garrett Riley likes to run. I think honestly, some of his best lines were those Ole Miss offensive lines, even though the Georgia ones certainly had a lot more stars on them.
Yep.
And so I think he's kind of in a better position to make those adjustments and kind of be more in tune with what changes need to happen and what progressions need to be made with certain individual players, and kind of what they're teaching as a whole. So I think Matt, if there's anybody that could do it, it's Matt Luke. But again, we'll have to see.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's absolutely going to develop this offensive line. Where they end up, that remains to be seen. But you can't question Matt Luke's ability. You can't question his track record. Look at all the All-Americans that he's produced. Look at the guys that he's put into the NFL. Look at, just the quality of offensive line that he's had at every single stop that he's been at. And I don't think Clemson will be any different. It's not going to be overnight. It takes time. Offensive line is one of those positions that is probably the slowest developing position on a college football roster. It just takes longer for those dudes to transition for whatever reason. So, it's not like he's going to click this magic button and just because Matt Luke showed up, suddenly all of our offensive line, problems go away. That's just not how it works. That's not reality. But with that said, we 100% got the right guy for the job, and he will make this offensive line better. No doubt in my mind.
I tend to agree. John talks about Gideon Davidson dropping in the 24/7 Sports rankings. Yeah,
I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah, and John, of all people, I know he doesn't give much thought to recruiting rankings, but it is just kind of one of those things where you're like, I mean, what are we doing here? I mean, it's the off season, nothing's really happened. But again, they put emphasis on camps and stuff, and he's just not a guy that's showing up to these off season camps and getting verified, measured, and all that stuff. And that's just ultimately that's going to ding you. And like I said last week, it's not even really that they're dinging you; it's that they're propping up other guys because they show up, and so that by consequence drops you. But Clemson knows what they got in Gideon Davidson. I feel really confident in what they got in Gideon Davidson. I think he's going to be a star.
Yeah, I mean, look,
here's
the thing that I always go back to when certain guys, whether it be they drop in recruiting or climb in the recruiting rankings, right? At the end of the day, you recruited the same guy. Regardless of how 247 feels about him today or 6 months from now, he's the same player, right? You have to trust that the staff made the evaluation. They obviously, Gideon Davidson was the guy they wanted, and they went and got him, and he committed early, right? So
yep.
That's what I always try to remember with these recruiting rankings, because I mean, you can get your emotions wrapped up into this stuff and be going crazy and like, why are they dropping this guy? Why is this guy rising? At the end of the day, I'm going to trust the evaluation of the Clemson staff. they recruited this guy. And if 247 wants to drop him in the rankings, hey, so be it. He's still the same player.
Absolutely. I love what we got in Gideon Davidson, and
and I'm not saying, I'm not a person that says recruiting rankings don't matter.
Right.
They do matter. Like there is an evaluation process. Like they do matter to an extent. But when it comes to a guy that you recruited and now he's verbally committed and suddenly he's dropping in the rankings, I don't think that matters. Because you evaluated that guy, you thought he was good enough, you offered him, he committed. Who cares where he ends up in the rankings?
Yeah, and again, guys move up and down. I mean, the cycle's far from over. So it's like, hey, Gideon was the player of the year in the state of Virginia last year. If he puts up a monster season again, and all of a sudden,
he'll probably move back up.
Yeah, so who knows? Yeah, it's one of those things. The official T asks, "Are we out of it for Pickett and Fegans?" Yes, on Pickett. Fegans, I think that's a recruitment that's trending away, but you're going to take your shot. I mean, him being, getting him on campus is a big deal. And I never count Clemson out completely with a guy if they get him on campus. But yeah, DJ Pickett, that was a recruitment that trended away a while ago. Just obviously not as much of a fit and kind of where his recruitment was headed. And you can probably kind of read between the lines on what I mean by that.
Yeah.
Tiger Tom asks, how key do you think Luke was to building those national championship teams at Georgia? Do you think he can be effective this weekend? I mean, I think he was a massive part, from a recruiting standpoint. He was one of the best recruiters. And I mean, obviously the circumstances why he left was kind of the burnout, and, working for Kirby Smart is a challenge, I guess is the right way to put it. But I think he was a massive part of those teams and the guys that he brought there, and he coached them up. Georgia had really good offensive lines, even after, and even after he left, some of the guys that he brought in. I think he was a big part of it. He wasn't there for very long, so I can't say he was he was one of the cornerstones, but he certainly was a massive, really big part of it, at least.
He brought in some big name guys there. Marius Mims, Broderick Jones, he brought in some big name guys to that offensive line group.
100%.
As he did when he was at Ole Miss.
Yep.
Same thing with Laramie Tunsil.
Yep.
Greg Little, just he recruits high-level offensive linemen.
Absolutely.
So I have no question on his ability to close the deal. Now that doesn't mean he's going to land Sanders or any other offensive line for that matter, or recruit for that matter. But he definitely has the ability, and he's got the track record to point to. The days of people negatively recruiting specifically along the offensive line against Clemson because, they don't develop NFL talent over there. They don't got All-Americans over there, blah, blah, blah. The days of that's not going to work anymore because you got a guy like Matt Luke standing there. And he can say, well, yeah, Clemson doesn't have this track record, but I do everywhere I've gone. So it ain't going to be any different here. Right? So.
Absolutely.